Welcome back, folks. So today we're going to be covering a stretch and fold session. This has already been folded once, but I wanted to give you a visual of one of the principles that we're going to learn today. Just like in martial arts, build up that foundation to be an effective martial artist, and in this case, a artisan baker. So here we go. One fold, two fold, and there's going to be coming a point where this paper is going to come to a point where it's going to be very difficult to continue folding this, and it's going to want to unravel on us, right? And at that point, we're unraveling. If I try to go even one more, it's going to be very difficult to even try and fold it, and it's definitely going to unravel on us. So that's the same concept in our dough. So before I covered this, I spritzed the sides, which makes scraping the excess flour, rather the excess dough that might be caught, so much easier. And that way we start off with a clean bin so that pockets of flour and dough do not dry out and create bits and pieces in our finished bread that look weird. We want a consistent quality, regardless of whether you're making one, or in this case, 31 pounds worth of dough. It's about 14 kilos, a little over. And this actually is a dough that was made with a starter that was living in my fridge for 3 months. And I started that experiment. How long does it take to revive a starter? It took me on day 7, I would definitely use it. Day 8 and 9, it was performing beautifully, doubling within 4 hours. So I'll put the link down below to the start of that experiment. So let's begin. So before I do my first fold here, I'm going to zoom out so you can get a better angle. We're going to use a little tub here with some water to wet my hands. And grabbing onto the corners and freeing them up like so. And the sides, flipping the tub, which again may be different if you're using a different size and or shape tub. So think in terms of the principle of loosening the dough before you go and pull it. So now this has been the second session, so I have much more elasticity. Sometimes they call this a slap and fold because of the noise it makes. And see how we're sticking there a little? We're going to go ahead and drag that, clean it up some, and free it up at the bottom. Turning our tub, finishing it off, and we're going to let it rest. But before I do that, I'm going to fix up these edges and reposition the dough so that I have one long dough to begin my folds again. You don't have to do this. You could have just left it at this angle. However, I find this way I have a much nicer looking long dough to perform those big folds. All right, we'll come back in about 20 minutes. And we're back 20 minutes later. Let's see how we've progressed. I'm going to clean up the sides here with my scraper. Now, if you're mixing this in a different container, or your preference is different in regards to wanting to take another fold, meaning we folded it like a giant sausage roll, right? And then I just turned it over to have a long dough to work with again. Say after I had folded it into the long sausage and you turned it over this way and you gave it one fold, another fold this way, kind of tucked in the corners and make it look pretty. That's totally good as well, especially if you're in a circular container. In this container, though, I found that having that long length is a little bit better than folding it into a tight square pattern versus long rectangular pattern, so that it gives me the ability to pull and use the shape of my length here in the container to really get the most out of my folds. So again, going back to principles, not necessarily exact technique, because your batch size, container size, skill set, etc. will be different from one baker to another, from one situation to another. But the technique, overall principle of the technique is going to be the same here in regards to we're building a gluten structure to create great texture, nice airiness, and the ability for it to hold its shape, regardless of what that shape is, when it comes time to shape it, and it doesn't just flatten out on you as it sits there waiting to be baked. All right, so here we are, our last fold. And just to give you an example here of how much more stretchier this dough is compared to the very beginning, right, I can really give it a nice thin pull, a nice window pane test, as they call it, and you can definitely see the shadows. So it's performing nicely for us. All right, so last fold here, one pull, and I'm not trying to pull too firmly on it. I just want it to support itself, per se, versus strain it and tear it. If you start to pull too much, you'll start to notice tears along the dough, and that's when you know you've gone too far. So make a note to self and know to back off a little before that happens. And that's when you get to really learn your dough and how your dough is performing. And last fold coming up here. And I'm going to tuck in the corners, just like last time, so that they're nice and neat, because when your dough finishes up looking nice and neat, then it will rise more uniformly. And it's very important for that to happen when you're dealing with a larger quantity of dough like this, because you'll have more of a consistency, a consistent result from the first bread that you shape to the very last. And that's what we're going after, consistency. Because then you'll start to really learn how your dough is responding. And it will also make troubleshooting easier, because you'll know what to expect from the very start to the very finish. All right, so how's that look, everyone? Thumbs up. I'm liking that. See how jiggly it is? So that's going to rest here covered. I'm going to mist the walls once more, so that way it reduces friction as it's rising. Give it a nice spritz on top. The gloves are coming off because we're done. We'll clean up the sides so things look nice and clean and pretty for us when we open this up to shape. And we'll take one more temp reading here just to see where we left off. And yes, I know it's just a surface temp, and that's okay for me in this situation. So we're looking at 70.3 degrees, my room temperature. Looking at 71, see that? And this is going to rest again, judging by the room temp, the dough temp, how it started as it progressed from my starter. And we're probably looking at sitting at bulk fermentation for 5, maybe 6 hours until it's ready to be shaped. So I'm going to put the link on the video of how I revived my sourdough starter after 3 months in the fridge for you to check out, along with a future link for taking this bread from its bulk fermentation stage to its final shape and bake. Thanks for watching, everyone, and if you got questions, leave them down below. This is Noris, the Kung Fu Baker with Sourdough Delight, wishing you a happy bake. Take care, everyone.